Some of you watching today's video may be asking yourself, what exactly is Complexcon? And some of you may be asking, what does Complexcon have to do with Disney as a brand, as an icon, as a part of pop culture? Let me try to explain to you how the two aren't too far apart. Some would tell you that Complexcon is a music event, and I would tell you that's like saying rock and roll is just about music and nothing else. And it has nothing to do with the lifestyle, attitude, or politics. Complexcon is about trend spotting and trend setting. What's now and what's next in pop culture and in the cultural zeitgeist. One of the most absolute diverse places that you will ever hang out for an afternoon. And all of these people, even though they're individuals, they come together and celebrate each other.
That's wild!
But my mission statement was to celebrate the art and culture and how pop culture reinterprets itself over and over again, and how there is a language, a visual language to iconography, to branding, to logos. It is a language that we all speak with our eyes, and why one character and one brand seems to stand out the most. This is my study into how the Disney Corporation is a visual language that is spoken inside of pop culture.
Greetings, fellow citizens of Complexcon of Long Beach. Brickey here. Today's adventure, taking a walk through Complexcon 2021 and looking at the influence and inspiration of the Walt Disney Corporation's characters and icons. It's a celebration of pop culture and consumerism at Complexcon 2021. Let's see how much Disney and Disney influence we can find at this year's Complexcon.
50 years ago, Nike used a check mark, which has now, 50 years later, evolved into the swoosh. The check mark became the swoosh because of its cultural impact. In 1985, the first pair of Air Jordans were just a shoe. Now, it is a platform for creativity and personal self-expression. Everything in pop culture is basically just one piece of Lego. It's a building block. Every brand, every logo, every icon, every illustration, every song, every movie ever made. And artists take all of these Lego and build new projects, new dreams, new interpretations of all the pieces that come before. So that when you stack up every Lego that's been made in pop culture, millions of ideas and projects of artists' hopes and dreams, they all come together, snap together to make what is pop culture. Is it a Lego? Is it a shoe? Is it an idea? Is it an art piece? It's always up to you. Pop culture is interpreted by the people that create it. It's a language of recognizable icons that have stood before the piece that stands in front of you. Mascots and characters are icons. They are one of the biggest languages inside of pop culture, whether it's something safe and friendly like Hello Kitty, or icons or mascots for something such as the holiday season, where we see gingerbread people and we instantly think holidays, Christmas, its branding, its icons, the visual language of Tokidoki, all of these various different characters, but the through line is the artist's style, the artist's message. Whether his characters are on a wall or sculpted in real life, you know it's Tokidoki. The popularity of Netflix's Squid Game started from the intrigue of this character design. The very first episode was paced so that you would see the characters and instantly want to know more about this world that is designed through the various different characters inside of Squid Game that left audiences only wanting to know more and left Netflix with its largest watched show of all time. But character design is only half of the language because the characters have to have an environment that they live in that makes sense. If you think of the influence of Disneyland, it is a world where all of your favorite characters and stories live inside of. When you see these trade shows come together, they're doing the same trick of trying to find what is the visual space that occupies the creativity of our brand. Maybe it's a cardboard castle, or maybe it's a tent or a pyramid. But icons, characters, have to have a space that they live in, a world that they belong to. That is what makes them real. That is what sets up their stories, and that is the magic that comes from the lamp that makes us fall in love with these characters. At Complexcon, it's fascinating to see how these smaller brands lean on the idea and design of installation, both permanent and temporary, to give their characters a space to live.
So in the past years, when I've gone to various different art conventions, and Complexcon is a very interesting one because it's right on the edge of trend. This is a place where you would go to spot trends develop way before they make their way to the mainstream. So much of the stuff that you will see here is just like outlandish for the sake of being outlandish. But at the core of it, you see how trend moves society forward and how the farthest edge of the trend creates the curve that eventually bends its way back to the mainstream. Disney has set up an iconography that people have been able to establish and recognize from toddler to teenager to 40-something. It is a language that we understand. So when artists use the bits and pieces of the Disney iconography, such as Mickey's gloves or shoes or the rounded ears, it instantly takes people to something that is familiar, but it's that next twist that is the artist's interpretation of that brand that is the intriguing part that I've always been interested in. Complexcon is a very, very wild event, something that I always enjoy going to every year. In the past, I've seen a ton of Disney influence. This year, a little bit lighter, and I don't know if that's the world is moving away from that, if maybe it feels a little bit played out, or after coming out of a pandemic, maybe the cartoon or character vibe just isn't where the cultural zeitgeist is at the moment. Either way, always love coming here and going out to the farthest edge of trend and seeing how one day it works its way back to the mainstream. This is a wave I've been surfing my entire life, and I just absolutely love it and adore it. And putting this Disney twist on it has made it very fun for somebody who's been a lifelong graphic designer, illustrator, and has been in this world for quite some time.
So we've looked at the space installation, and we have talked about how characters manifest a vibe of the artist and speak this language. Now let's look over at something I've always been fascinated with, how toys have become sculpture, how toys have become something of art. If we look at the famous platform known as the Bear Brick, created in 2001, we see some Mickey influences. And then when we look over at the fine artist Cause, whose work has just become incredibly big, there are some things there that we can find familiar from the pieces that create Mickey Mouse, such as the oversized gloves with the cuff on them, and where the bones protrude from the skull. It's very similar to where the ears lie. But not every character has the personality of a Disney character, and what makes things such as the Bear Brick or Space Monkeys interesting is it's the platform reinterpreted over and over again, just like the case sample with the Nike Air Jordans at the beginning of this video. Sometimes parodies of brand are not done in a polite way to make a message, but sometimes it's the idea of a thing inside of the thing, like the great illustrator Jeremy Fish, who put the skull inside of this art piece, or Alex Pardee, who's taking his style and injecting it into the Warner Brothers characters. That is the type of collab I like to see, where it's an artist putting in their fingerprint and interpreting this brand, using the pieces, if you will, that already exist from something else to build something new and to build something that's very familiar. So parody on the idea of parody and sort of taking the piss out of something, not exactly my favorite realm because I don't feel like it takes a ton of creativity. But when an artist can find a way to take the world of pop culture and break it down into something that we haven't seen before, whether it's taking actual figures, submerging them into a new interpretation and making these charms, it's up to everyone to decide where something becomes a new idea. Long Beach artist Scat One takes this very familiar face and color drops and uses that familiarity along with some recognizable facial characteristics to give you something that feels new and familiar all at the same time. It's like a unique brand of instant nostalgia. The LA hands done by street artist OG Slick instantly takes something that is very recognizable as Southern California, which is Mickey Mouse, using his signature gloves in the shape of the letters L and A, tells the story of so many stories all in one glimpse. Something that you might like now, like Cause, reinterpreting something that you loved, such as Star Wars from your childhood, creates that instant nostalgia of pop culture reinterpretation. Character form is only one part of a great visual story. Texture takes you someplace more tactile, like this Cause piece that feels just like something from the Muppets. Or probably the best find of Complexcon 2021 was this series of pieces, interpreting not only with the Mickey gloves, but the idea of the wooden boy known as Pinocchio. Not an IP created by Walt Disney, but an IP that has been associated through the version that Walt Disney told the world. So even Walt himself is an OG at taking things that existed and retelling them inside of his artistic lens. But the little boy holding his own head, looking back at him with the blank eyes, with the Jordans on, this piece just feels like everything happening right now. Telling this story in mixed media of paintings and sculpture, we see this boy, self-made, carving himself out of wood and using so many icons that we recognize from the stories of our youth, such as Jiminy Cricket sitting on his knees, the signature gloves with the black stitching on the upper knuckle, and parodying the old famous Maxell cassette ad just for a little more pop culture. It's always up to everyone where an old idea starts and something new begins, but it's fun to see it interpreted over and over again, such as what would have happened if Oswald would have been the character that went on and became the star of Fantasia and the Disney Fortune. An alternative version of the real story, maybe in an alternative timeline. But through the interpretation of creativity, we get to see Oswald become the center. And then this parody of taking Ozzy Osbourne and mashing it up, we go one more step deeper. It's always up to you to interpret. Is this a toy? Is this a sculpture? Is this parody? Is this a new idea? The fun of studying pop culture is every single one of us see it differently, and every piece invokes a different reaction in all of us. But there has to be a moment when old ideas get interpreted into something brand new, built off of a familiarity that instantly makes us feel like we've already known what we're looking at. But there has to be a crossroad where that new idea begins and we are seeing something brand new, but yet feeling a vibe of familiarity, a deja vu, as if we have seen this piece, seen this image, or we have been there before. And ultimately, through life, we're all dealing with some form of trying to get back to a distant time of nostalgia, when we were younger, when life was easier, when we felt safe, when things were just the way that they were and we didn't know any better. Nostalgia is an insane thing to chase, and the world of art constantly reframes and restructures it and gives it back to you. So just the simple idea of a balloon can be made fun again. And that's what this event is all about. taking old parts of our history, repackaging them, and making something new and making something fun.
All right, I officially think it's my time to get out of here. What a wild time!
One of my favorite things that I saw this year at Complexcon was so many different types of people coming up to each other and complimenting them on the way that they looked, on what they were wearing, and illustrating that no one is ever too cool to say something nice to somebody else.
Okay, so definitely a very interesting Complexcon. If I compare it to years past, a couple of things that I noticed. Not nearly as many major, like big brands there. A lot more independent stuff and mid-sized brands. And then also a lot of the influence of Disney and that strand of pop culture kind of missing. I think after the last year of the pandemic and some of the political upheaval that this community observes and the pressure that these people felt with what was going on in the world, I'm going to say that the vibe has taken a more serious tone. I literally remember coming here in the past and it would be a lot more, we'll say, easy breezy, light going, a lot more playful parodies of various different, sort of nostalgia type things. But a great example was the booth that we saw today that's doing a parody of Ghostbusters, which would be in that nostalgia realm, but then switched over to I'm Not Afraid No Ghosts, the ghost being of the Ku Klux Klan. So whereas before a Ghostbusters collab here would have probably been something fun with Slimer and very pop culture and very illustrated, you definitely see it taking a tone over to something way more serious, way more socio-political, and it's not a bad thing. Art, design should always be a mirror to the society in which it's inspired by, and with Complexcon being a huge consumer product show that really showcases what's going on in pop culture, you have to have the culture to have the pop culture. So definitely a different beat, a different vibe, but then again, the world has changed. Everything in the world has changed. So why wouldn't also those that mimic and spoof the world, people that are too cool for the regular rules, of course, their vision of things have changed as well. Just a thought, just to take away when I compare this to other years and how it's sort of changed. Also, smaller footprint, not as many booths. Definitely a little bit of a different vibe in that realm, but still a good time and always fun to see all of this creativity just massed into one space. I'll be back in 22, no doubt about it. So friends, I hope you enjoyed today's video. I know that it's very different for the channel, but that's a good thing, right? We should always be going out, finding new adventures, and whenever I could take my other life experience and bring it back into the world of Disney and show you guys like a different way that the brand is interpreted through fashion, through art, through consumerism, through iconography. It's always an honor to share all of these mixed bag of things that I love and studied my entire life, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, let me know down in the comments below. I would love to do more stuff like this, but it only makes sense if you enjoy it as much as I do. Brickey, on the edge of Complexcon 2021. Thank you so much for going on this journey with me. I hope you had as much fun as I did.